Okay, good morning everybody. Last night I had a nightmare. Only 4 people or 5 people came to our session and they were all our colleagues, but big crowd, so we're happy to be here. Today we're going to talk about a Pokémon application we made with Drupal 8 and Angular. So who are we? This is Robin, a friend and colleague of mine, and my name is Fons. We are both employed at EntityOne, an awesome Drupal firm based in Ghent. We are, of course, Pokémon enthusiasts, and we have crazy ideas from time to time, and we mostly make them come to life in Drupal environments, because it's the only thing we really know. You can follow our adventures on Twitter, on @fons.vandamme and @robin.ingelbrecht. Also, the slides will be published there after the session, probably in the afternoon. So, this is how Pokémon Locator looks like when you surf to the website. But what is Pokémon Locator? It's a Drupal 8 based application that shows stuff that live in the Pokémon world. For example, Pokéstops. Pokéstop is a place where you travel to, and when you spin a wheel you get some items that are useful in the Pokémon GO app. You have active lures, which are Pokéstops that are active and attract Pokémon in the wild. And on our app you can also see, based on your location, the top 3 lures in your neighborhood, so you don't have to walk a lot, which is good if you're a bit lazy like us. And also you can see gyms where you can fight each other in Pokémon GO, of course. So, Pokémon Locator was, as far as we know, the first map around. It was launched in Belgium. It was launched the day Pokémon GO came out in Belgium. A week before that it was already live in the US, and there were tips and tricks and hacks to already start playing, but we didn't do that. We waited, because patience is a virtue. So it took us like 3 days to get it online. So 3 days before the launch in Belgium we were like, okay, we have to make a map because it doesn't exist yet. And then we started developing after hours. We chose for this approach, which was incremental. The first version that came online was a bit crappy, but we improved it quite fast based on the user feedback. And well, we went online, and the first day our server really couldn't handle the traffic. It was offline a lot. So some stats. The first day we had around 10,000 unique visitors, and 4,700 stops and gyms were added by users. So every marker was really added by a user itself that was using our application, which was kind of nice to see. A lot of people are using something you made. But after a while, players started using other solutions. We don't show Pokemon spawns on our map because you'd had to write code that is against the term of service of the app developer, and we didn't want to get into that. So we went from 10k unique visitors a day to between 300 and 500 unique visitors a day. And then a lot of these applications came up that really violated the terms of service, but they come and go. So you can have a new map coming online tomorrow and it will be offline again in 2 weeks. So yeah, that's about it. But in the end we had a lot of fun making Pokémon Locator, and this is a picture illustrating how much fun we had. This is in the Citadel Park, so we were developing the app, and we also, of course, went hunting for Pokemon, which my wife didn't like. So, today's topics. We're going to talk about the environment we used to create Pokémon Locator, which is a KDev desktop. Then we're going to talk about a custom content entity we created, small talk about Guzzle, which we also used, AngularJS, of course, and the templating, which is the heart of our application. Leaflet and Google Maps, which is also used because it's a map. And then resources, a little information about teaming, and security, which is also important, of course. So first up, KDev Desktop. This is a free application made by Akia. So we use it for local development. So basically it's the same like a WAMP, XAMPP or LAMP stack, but there's really no hassle to install it, and they update it quite frequently. It comes with the following pieces, of course Apache. You have PHP versions, different ones, so you can run Drupal 7 and 8 websites quite easily. You have MySQL, you have XML server on Windows, and you have Drush pre-installed. Always the latest version, so your local development stack is maintained without having to know all kind of weird commands. So it's quite easy to set up a new and existing website. So if you want to switch now to Akia Dev Desktop, it's quite easy. And there's also a possibility to integrate with Akia Cloud. We haven't used that yet, but you know it's there. If you have more info about it, I wrote a blog post about it, so you can read all about it there. Next up, custom entity. So we needed custom entities in our application, so we made the markers custom entity, and we used Drupal console to do that. What is Drupal console? It's a command line interface based on the Symfony console, and it really makes sure you can boilerplate or get boilerplate code quite fast, like a module structure, a custom entity, a form, or a plugin. For example, the command to get a new content entity, because now in Drupal 8 you have content entities and config entities, but to get a content entity you just put Drupal generate entity content, and the wizard will ask you a lot of questions about the entity you want to create. For example, the module name, and what module do I have to create this entity? If you haven't made a module yet, it's best to run the command first to create the module. Then you say what name does the entity class have to be, what's the machine name, where do you want it to be put in the admin, for example admin structure Pokémon, and then you'll see it will ask you, is the entity translatable, because this also comes in Drupal core now in 8, and then you'll see it generates a lot of files for you, so you don't have to bother doing that all by yourself, so you can really start working on your custom code quite fast and easily. So this, for example, is an annotation that was created by Drupal console. What is an annotation? It's a structured comment, and it has a bit the same structure as the YAML files. So for example, here you will see all the properties from the entity, and it describes in the entity class where the add form lives, what the machine name is, what the labels are. So I think it's there because it has a better relationship to the class. So they could also say, okay, put this in a YAML file, which doesn't work, of course, but then there would be a less relation between these two. Then the next thing you have to do is define some fields, of course, in your custom entity. Here, for example, we made a field called type because we have different markers and they have a type. So you fill in all the properties and then you enable your module. If you want to add an extra field afterwards to the class, it's very important that you run the Drush entity updates because this command will pick this up and your entity will be updated. This is an example of the marker types we created. So you have markers and then you have different marker types. For example, a gym, a stop, or a lure is a different type. We created a factory class that creates all these markers. This class extends, the classes like marker gym extend a base class to add new markers, but this wasn't the best solution. It would be better to use the built-in Drupal 8 plugin solution, which makes sure you can make reusable code quite easily. For example, in Drupal 8 core, the field widget is a plugin type, because you have plugin types and then you have plugins. The field widget is a plugin type, and then the different kinds of field widgets that you use are plugins. So it would be even better if we created a plugin for this, but we didn't. We had to go fast. We only had 3 days, what would be even more user-friendly maybe would be to also create a custom entity for the marker types, but we didn't do that either. Okay.
So we figured before we went live we couldn't start with an empty map, so we knew there were already a few Google Maps out there with some markers on it, and we decided to scrape them to get some initial data, and we did that with Guzzle. So what is Guzzle? Guzzle is a PHP HTTP client to send all kinds of requests, and it comes shipped with Drupal core. So when you install a new Drupal 8 website, you can immediately start using it, and it replaces Drupal HTTP requests in Drupal 7. So how did we use Guzzle? Drupal 8 provides its own wrapper around this library, HTTP client class. So we need the HTTP client class, and we did this by defining our own service in services.vandamme. So we told the services.vandamme our own class is marker import manager, and we need an instance of HTTP clients to initialize our own class. So what this does, it tells Symfony, which is used by Drupal 8, it tells Symfony before creating an instance of our own manager, you first have to create an instance of HTTP client, which contains Guzzle, and pass it on to our constructor so we can start using it. Then your constructor will look like this. It will magically get an instance of the client's class, and you can just start using it. So how can you execute requests? For example, we had to get data from a specific URI. Then you can add some, it's not required, additional headers, for example content type header, and add the out headers, username and password. Guzzle will automatically, because this is basic out, encode these values and send them with your requests. So if all goes well, you'll get a response, and this response is of type response interface. So it isn't a structured array anymore like in Drupal 7. It's a nice object now with a lot of properties. One of those properties is status code, so you can get the status code from the objects. So here we check if the status code is equals 200, which means the request was executed successfully. We do some things. In our case, we mapped the Google markers with our own marker entity and then saved it to the database. So at this point, we had our own custom entity with like around 1,000 markers. Next, we started implementing Angular. So why did we use Angular? We always want to learn something new in every project we start. And a client of ours needed an Angular app, and because our Angular skills were close to non-existing, we decided to polish them up a bit. That's why we use Angular. So what is Angular? Angular is a JavaScript library that allows you to decouple your DOM structure from your JavaScript code. For example, jQuery doesn't do that. jQuery is dependable on your DOM structure, which means, for example, when teamers start to team and change your DOM structure you made, your HTML structure, chances are you have also to change your jQuery code because it's dependable on the DOM structure. AngularJS has a neat solution for this, so that's really cool. It also allows you to decouple the client side of your application with the server side of your application. So for example, your client side can be hosted on server A, and the server side can be hosted on server B, and they will communicate with each other through AJAX requests. So that is what we did, kinda. So most of the time your Angular application will be fully decoupled, which means the client side can be on server A, server side on server B. But we wanted to use Drupal 8 core Twig templating and Drupal 8 core caching with the custom nested render arrays, so we could have complete control on how our page or pages would be rendered. That's why our application is semi-decoupled. So all dynamic data like the markers and the counts are fetched through AJAX requests, which is decoupled, but the initial page load of our website is rendered through Twig templates, so Drupal 8 core templating, and that's not decoupled, so that's why we think it's semi-decoupled. We have only one page on our website, which is the map. And we have implemented a templating structure, a nested templating structure with a page template, which has a sidebar and a content template, and the content has the map and the social media button templates. So this is our structure. After defining our templating structure, we made a libraries YAML file with multiple libraries which are dependable on each other. To easy manage those libraries, so we can easily switch out libraries. As you can see, we have a Pokémon Leaflet library which contains all dependable leaflet files, CSS and JavaScript. We have the core Angular library and our Angular app library, which contains all custom Angular code we wrote. And this is a library that is dependable on, of course, the core Angular library. And then last but not least, we have our Angular leaflets library, which is dependable on all the things above. And does all the heavy lifting. Now, because we use nested render arrays and these libraries, these 10 lines of code render our whole website. So this is really readable and compact. This is basically our website. Next, we defined our Angular structure. Pretty basic. We made an Angular folder which contains all the Angular contributed code, so the core and the directives. We only use one directive. It's the leaflet directive. A directive is a plugin, or in Drupal it would be called a concept module. In Angular it's called a directive. Then we have our app folder, which contains all our custom code, and then the other libraries, just normal JavaScript or jQuery libraries we used. Now, like I said before, Angular allows you to decouple your HTML from your JavaScript code, and it does that through binding. In this case, we're telling in our HTML code, show this button when the JavaScript variable has to zoom in is false. So default, when the page is loaded, Angular will pick this up because all attributes that start with ng are Angular related. So Angular knows this, and we bind the button. So we're telling Angular only show this button when this variable is false. And the button texts, so this is an Angular placeholder. We tell Angular replace the button texts with the value of the variable button text, of course. How does this JavaScript look? So we check some stuff, and if it applies, we tell has to zoom in is false. At this point, Angular will pick this up and automatically will show the button, and then we tell set the button text equal to you can click it now, and Angular will automatically replace the placeholder button text with that text. So this is decoupled. Now, for example, themers can switch out the button tag by a submit tag, or wrap it in a lot of diffs and spans and whatever they want to do, and your code will still work because it's DOM independable, which is pretty cool. Another example is ng-click. That's comparable to JavaScript on click events or jQuery .click events. So we're telling Angular, when this link is clicked, just execute the function at Pokestop. And that function is defined in JavaScript code and does some fancy stuff. You can also, instead of executing a function, you can directly in your HTML change your JavaScript variables. So here we directly change the center of the map to other values without executing a function and doing it in a function. So if your code is pretty simple, you can do it in your HTML DOM structure. So that's how you, pretty basic, of course, that's how you bind elements and let Angular know what he has to do when certain things happen. Next, we used an Angular directive, so an Angular plugin, to bind Angular and Leaflet together. So the plugin makes Angular and Leaflet work together. So what can we do now? We're telling the Leaflet directive, so bind the map, the center of the map with the variable center, bind the markers with the variable markers, bind the layers with the variable layers, and so on. So here we're just defining what has to be mapped with what. How this is looked in JavaScript, we extend our scope, so our variables, we set the defaults, we set the center, so to latitude, longitude, and at this point the Leaflet directive will pick this up and will center the map automatically to the values you have put in your JavaScript code. And then we add the layers and the markers. I will come back on this later because it's a little bit more complicated. So yeah, that's that. The Leaflet directive plugin does all the heavy lifting for you, so you just can use it and do the easy stuff. So Angular and Twig. As most of you know, I think, if you want to print variables in Twig, you have to use curly brackets. So that's a reserved char sequence in Twig. But like we have seen with the button text placeholder, Angular default also uses curly brackets. So that's a conflict. So what are the solutions? One of the solutions is you can change the interpolation tags in Angular, for example, to curly bracket, curly brackets, and then you won't have a conflict anymore. Or the solution that we used is use this notation in your Twig template and it will work. You could also an option, but I don't recommend it, change the interpolation tags in your Twig, but then Drupal core will totally flip out because all the core templates use curly brackets, so that's not recommended. But if you use Twig as a standalone plugin, you can change the interpolation tags in Twig. Next, Leaflet and Google Maps. What is Leaflet? Leaflet is an open source JavaScript plugin to create mobile friendly maps. It has a lot of community built plugins, which is really nice, and it's very important. It has a well documented API, and it supports map providers, which means that you can use Google Maps, or you can use OpenStreetMaps, or you can even use your own map if you have an own implementation. Sorry, I had to switch earlier to that. So yeah, that's that. Now, like we've seen before, with the Leaflet directive, you initialize your map, so we set already the default, the center, and then it's recommended to also restrict the events on your map, because this will speed up your application. In our case, we told the Leaflet plugin only reacts on the drag int event of a marker, so when a marker is dragged and it's dropped, trigger that event, and for the map, only trigger zoom int and move events. All the other events, ignore them. This will speed up your application because there are a lot of Leaflet events if you don't restrict them a lot. First plugin we used with Leaflet is the Google Maps Leaflet plugin. First of all, you need a Google API key, of course. You have to include the Google Maps library, which we did in our libraries YAML file. And you need to include the Google Maps Leaflet plugin, which connects the Google library with Leaflet, of course. Also included in your YAML file, libraries YAML file. And then you can initialize your layers. So there are multiple types of layers in Leaflets. one of them is the base layer. So here we add a base layer of type Google, and Leaflet will automatically know what to do, and it will show you a Google map centered with your defined center, which we did earlier. So this is the code to render a Google map. Pretty easy. Then the second plugin we used is Marker Cluster. So it's a contributed plugin, and it's very useful when there are a lot of markers on a small area. So what Marker Cluster will do is it will cluster all the markers that are in the same area to one marker and show the count of the markers that are in that area, and when you zoom in they will be shown as separate markers again. So pretty cool. It's configurable, and it's also integrated in the Leaflet Angular directive. Pretty neat. So this is again a layer, but of another type, not a base layer like we had here, but it's an overlay of type, like you can see, Marker Cluster. We added one option to that overlay, and that is disable clustering zoom at level 18, which means if you're at zoom level 18 or higher, don't enable clustering, just show all the markers separately, whatever the count of the markers. And then, now we configured our map, we had our default map, but there isn't any data on it. We still have to show our markers. So, first we loaded all the markers on initial page load, and in the beginning we only had 1,000 markers, which we imported with Guzzle. That wasn't a problem, but after a day or two we had already, I think, 7,000–8,000 markers, and the page load was 4 or 5 seconds, which isn't that good, and the user experience on mobile phones wasn't that great either, so we had to do something. So we changed the approach to only loading the markers in the current viewport. So how do we do it? We bound 2 events to our map, zoom ends. So when a user is done zooming, loads the markers in the viewport, or when the user is done moving the map, so dragging or an external event, load the markers in the viewport. Notice that we used the bounce function. What this does is, for example, when you drag multiple times, there will be executed multiple AJAX requests. But if you implement debounce will make sure that only the AJAX request is executed when the event isn't triggered for 500 milliseconds. So this decreases our server load a lot, because there are a lot less AJAX requests. Then the third option, which we haven't implemented yet but is even better, is using a tile layer. So what is a tile? A map is made up out of a lot of small images that are put side by side. So you have the illusion this is one big image. And each tile has a z, x, y coordinates to describe its position in the grid. So why would you use a tile layer? Because it's cached efficiently. For example, if you watch Brussels today on a Google map and you watch it again tomorrow, your browser can load the images, because tiles are images, from the browser cache, and you don't have to fetch it from the server anymore. And the map loads progressively. So first the center of the map is loaded, and then the outer edges, which has an advantage if you already want to zoom in your map. Before the whole map is loaded, you can do this because it's loaded progressively. Now, what is the advantage for us? Now we have our own events, zoom, end, and move, which we implement, and we have to write a lot of code around it. But if you use a tile layer, Leaflet will do all the heavy lifting and will take care of the events, so it will show the correct tiles in the current viewport, and all the correct markers will be loaded automatically. So this is even a better and more efficient solution, but we haven't implemented yet in this application. Next, we have to load our markers through Angular with AJAX requests. So we have to expose some endpoints in our backends. And how did we do this? We did this with Drupal 8 resources. But first we did it the wrong way. So I'll take you to the steps how not to do it. So, step 1, make just a default Drupal 8 controller, and instead of returning a render array, return a JSON response. Step 2, Google Drupal 8 custom resource to get more info on how to pass parameters and stuff. Step 3, find out there is a blog post where Wim Leers has commented on, and he has strong arguments against this approach. Why? Because you have custom paths per method, which means you have a custom path for the gets, custom path for post, for puts, for all different methods. You have no default access control, no CSRF protection, and you are not using the Drupal core REST API. So yeah, step 4, start over again. This is exactly what we did. We started over again, and we did it the right way. So we again used Drupal console to create a resource. It will take you through a wizard with some questions, and it will create one file, which is a resource class. And again, it will add an annotation which contains the ID of your resource, the label, and the path on which the resource has to be available. In our case, we added 3 parameters, Z, X, and Y, which are then automatically passed to your functions you define in your class. Notice that the marker class extends resource base. That class has already some basic functionality which you don't have to worry about. Then you can implement into your class, of course, the functions you want to be available. So, for example, get and post and put. We implemented get. We get our 3 parameters, Z, X, and Y. We check some things. If it is alright, we return 403 exception. If everything goes good, we fetch the markers and we return a new resource response with our markers. So, this approach, we had some caching problems. Even though we disabled the cache for this page, we tried also using our own cache tags, but nothing seems to work for anonymous users. The call still got cached. So we had to use the kill switch to disable the cache for that page, which we aren't really proud about, but we haven't found another solution yet. So if you have a better solution, please come tell us after the session. Now, when you clear your cache and go to the REST UI, you will notice that your resource will be available in the UI of REST. You can then enable it and configure it on which authentication you use. It can be cookie or basic auth. You can also provide your own authentication like OAuth. And we tell the UI it's in a JSON format. And last but not least, Drupal 8 core will automatically expose a permission for each function implemented in your resource. So we only have one, the get. So and then you can configure which user can access the endpoint on your resource. So that was the resources.
Okay, so now our map was made. Now we had to make it fancy. So we are developers, so this was the fun part for us. So we Googled a lot. We were changing stuff in CSS. We refreshed the page, and then we were like, did I do that? Mostly because everything broke. But we learned a lot of stuff in the process about theming. So first we made a custom theme based on Classy. Classy is a base theme that comes with Drupal 8, and Classy is really clean. So it doesn't have any toeters and bellen. I don't know how you say it in English. So this is the structure of our theme, which is called Poké. I named it Pokémon first, but we already had a Pokémon module, and then also everything stopped working, so we had to change the name around. So theming, the first thing we do is set up an info file. This is important because Drupal will pick up your theme name, so we named it Poké. It's of type theme. And a description and basically the same values as you would use in a Drupal 7 theme, except that it's in a YAML file now. We also say, hey, our libraries live here, so that's the CSS and the JavaScript. And then in the next file, we define our libraries that we set in the info file. The libraries file is here. And then in the libraries file, we say, hey, this is the CSS. So we have font awesome for fancy icons and our Pokémon CSS file, which has all our tremendous ugly CSS in it. And then the JavaScript files. For example, we used some Bootstrap. We went total crazy on that. We used some jQuery touch swipe, so the menu would work on swiping on your mobile device, and then also some custom JavaScript. And we also have dependencies. Now in your custom theme you have to really tell Drupal to load in jQuery, otherwise it won't work for anonymous users. This took me a while to figure out too. Then we wanted to do it the fancy way, so we used Sass and not normal CSS. A blog post told me how to do that, and I had to make a config RB file first with all the dependencies. We used Suzy as a grid because I read about it and people say it's a good grid, so we start using that. We use breakpoints for the breakpoints because we want to use it on our mobile device, because when we were in the Citadel Park earlier on the picture, we wanted to see everything around us. Then you have Sass globbing, which is for auto discovery in your directions, but if you want to know more about it, just Google it. And then we tell the file where everything lives. So the HTTP path, the CSS dir, the Sass dir, the images, where does everything live? And then we say, how do you want our CSS to be generated? I wanted it to be expanded, but you can also make it compressed once it works, and you can even put line comments in it. It makes it easier to debug when you have weird things in your CSS that is generated. Then the last file we used Ruby, so we had a gemlog file with all dependencies and the versions we used. So these are the components we used in our team. And the next thing we did was compile all the code. So we ran comp as watch and everything started compiling. There are probably better ways to do this, like using grunt or gulp to even optimize that workflow, but we're not really used to doing that. 2 days ago I used grunt the first time, and it was awesome, but we didn't use it here. And then we have a result. It was a mobile-friendly website. After hours of headbanging and using the mighty Google, this is what came out. You can surf to our website. It's not so bad for developers, even if we say it ourselves, I think. And then last but not least, we are professionals, so security is very important. So we wanted to work with HTTPS, and we were using a shared hosting, and we were like, we'll have to buy a certificate. Wrong. Our shared hosting comes with Cpanel, and it had Let's Encrypt on it, which makes sure you can generate or get certificates free, for free. So the only thing we had to do was push this button, generate. We have 2 domain names. We also bought the NL domain name, and then we generated SSL certificates for both of them. So we just had to click issue both certificates. The server started to do some stuff, and then it said it's installed, good job, now you have SSL. And now we still had to force it on our website. There are 2 ways to do this. We did it, we edited our htaccess file. So I said rewrite the condition for our website, rewrite the rule to HTTPS. But now every time we update our website, the Drupal core, this gets overwritten. So the other way is to do it in the settings file. I think it's better to do it in the settings file, but we haven't updated yet, I think, because we were already running the latest version. So we have to change that around. Also, if you want more info about this, I made a blog post about it, so you can read all about it there. So that was it. Thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, please let us know. Are there any questions? Okay, thanks a lot. If you have any questions that pop up, you can always come to us during the day, of course.